Welcome to the Microcast, the short-form podcast from Microcosm Coaching, where we break down the science, strategy, and psychology behind smarter endurance training. Each week, we tackle a key concept in running, training, or recovery, and we give you practical tools you can apply right away, whether you're building back, leveling up, or chasing down a big goal. We keep it short, evidence-based, and grounded in real coaching experience. No hype, no fluff, just actionable insights to help you train sustainably and perform at your best. Let's get into it. And we're back.
We're back.
What was that, a 2-week hiatus?
Nope, just 1 week. I actually did put an episode in the feed last week, so folks should go back and listen to that.
I heard you mention that I was sick on that.
Yeah.
Because
we were both sick.
Someone stopped me in the grocery store asking me if I was feeling better. And I was like, how do you know I was sick? That's so strange.
And you look down at your basket and it's full of ginger ale and Pepto.
And baby wipes.
Baby wipes. We had a challenging week last week.
Oh, gosh. We also had a great week last week. We got together with our athletes. Mm-hmm. We had a boot camp
That
weekend.
was a highlight.
Folks stayed at our house.
That was very fun.
We were totally unprepared for that.
Extremely unprepared.
Yet we had a great time.
Best time ever.
So fun.
Would do it again, minus getting norovirus at the end of it.
Yes. How that happened, I will never know.
We'll never know, and it doesn't matter. All I know is, well, you got sick first, and I remember waking up and being like, oh, thank God I'm not sick, because that looks like it really sucks.
It's not fun.
And then exactly 12 hours later, I was like, uh-oh.
You had a bucket next to you in the bed.
I had to fall asleep with a bucket. So that was my week last week. And I took a lot of meetings last week, camera off.
Oh, you do that?
Oh, yeah, dude. If I have norovirus, people don't get to see what I was convalescing. I had to be supine during the meetings because I was just like, if I move, I'm going to vom.
Oh my gosh, I haven't taken those liberties yet, but I might have to change some of my tactics for the next time I get the norovirus.
If I'm actively ill, I'm camera off, you know? I was like, anyway, it was a tough week. It was theoretically going to be your and I's peak week training for Run Rabbit.
Yep, did not happen.
That was not my peak week. I guess my peak week was the week before.
I think my peak week happened when I trained for Chianti.
Yeah.
So
peak week was February.
That's I was actually talking a little bit with my coach earlier today, and he was just mentioning that we missed some training, but training is cumulative.
Yes.
And, technically I've been training for this race for years. Mm-hmm. So, right now, the fact that I want to do very long runs and probably shouldn't because we're not going to reap any of those benefits on race day.
Nope.
It's more just something that I'm doing to try to appease an emotional state that I have. And
that is not what training is for.
Got to be careful about that.
If you want to change how you feel, you listen to Alanis Morissette. You don't go and run for 8 hours.
That would make me feel worse about my situation.
But it would change how you feel. It would evoke a strong emotion.
It would evoke a very strong emotion, not a positive emotion, not the emotion that I need to get through this time in my delicate athletic life.
Maybe you need to bump some Lizzo then. That would be like my musical prescription. Lizzo loud enough to cause permanent eardrum damage, and then you'll feel better. I'm a professional.
You know what you're doing.
I do know what I'm doing.
You know how to get the right music for the job.
I have blown out the speakers in 2 different vehicles I have owned.
That's impressive.
Yeah.
That's impressive.
But is it surprising?
No. All right. I'm sure that people want to know what we're getting into today. So why don't you walk us through the timeline?
We're going to do a few hot or nots as we are wont to do. Then we are going to answer a question from Reddit.
Love the questions from Reddit. This is a good one.
Questions from Reddit. And then we are going to talk about the science of ultra pacing. So I synthesized a bunch of really cool studies that definitively show us how you should run an ultra to improve your chances of success. So I'm really pumped about this because it's always great to be able to bring data to training prescriptions. So that is going to be the meat of our conversation today. But to start, we'll dive in with some hot or nots, and these were sent in by the community. So thank you guys so much for sending in these suggestions. You've had at least a week to think about it now without us in your ears. So ideally you have some other really great suggestions for hot or nots and or listener questions. So feel free to either comment or shoot us an email, microcosmcoaching@gmail.com.
Yeah, shout out to our Foothills folks getting in on the conversation over there and our athletes. I really appreciate going in there and seeing what everyone is like talking about and what they find interesting. And then I really like to grab that and put that on our outline.
Yep.
So, maybe without further ado here, we just get into it. This one popped up. I was surprised to see it. But it is a great hot or not. Doing 2 long races, for example, 2 100-milers or even 2 marathons, depends on, where you're at in the process. But doing 2 long races within 6 to 8 weeks apart from each other, hot or not?
So I'm going to defer my answer because I did the Never Summer 100K 3 weeks ago. And in 3 weeks, I'll be running the Run Rabbit 100-miler. So that is a 100K and a 100-mile race 6 weeks apart. That feels pretty big. This is the first time I've tried something so big, so close together. I will say that I definitely had a conversation with my coach prior to doing this. B, it is not my first dalliance with either of those distances. C, I am extremely durable. One time someone said I was built like a brick shit house.
Oh.
I'm not sure if that was a compliment, but I'm going to take it as such.
Yes,
because
that
I
is
am
definitely
extremely
a compliment.
durable.
I'd rather be a brick shit house than
a shit brick house?
Shit brick house. Yeah, exactly.
You don't want to be built like a shit brick house.
No, not when I'm going into a 100-mile race.
So, all of that context, I'm trying something a little new, and all of the races I'll have done the 67-mile race I did in July will be the shortest event I've done all year.
Wow, you're a hero of long distance races.
I am a brick shit house.
So, I think in order for you to appease your emotional state around this, you have to say that it's hot.
Well, I don't know, because I think I don't know, I don't know yet. I will say that, again, I was a little nervous because, on paper, it seemed pretty chill. And then as soon as I ran the 100K and then felt like, oh my God, I just ran a 100K, I started to be a little like,
chill.
And I recovered quite well. I was really, really intentional about my recovery, and have been extremely intentional about my training and recovery in the intermedium. But I do really feel like actively I'm pursuing this with curiosity and
nice.
a mindset of experimentation.
I will say that's excellent.
Thank you.
And I love that mindset. But I actually don't think it's that hot to race long races that often. I think if you're doing 100K in the context of a 100-miler because you're an experienced athlete and you want that stress and a long supported effort before going into 100, that could be strategic. But a 100-miler doesn't necessarily train you for another 100-miler. Those not necessarily or this marathon and then that marathon 8 weeks later, not necessarily super supportive of each other. And at a certain point, we're doing one and we're hoping we're recovered enough to perform well at the other one. I don't find that hot.
Yeah.
I don't find that hot for my athletes. I don't find that hot for myself in my own athletic career. I would rather have larger swaths of time where I can actually train and then recover in a meaningful way for these events that I could actually perform at my best.
Yeah, I will say, and I'm speaking as an athlete, not a coach right now, my comfort zone is definitely erring on the side of I would rather do more training than more racing. That makes me feel more confident. I enjoy it. I enjoy training quite a bit. Putting my coach hat back. So as an athlete, I'm kind of oh man, especially since I missed my peak week from being sick, I would love to have a little more training consistency between these two big events. However, putting my coaching hat back on, I will also say I never like being put in that position where I feel the strategy between events is just fucking survive.
Yeah, survive it.
let's just hope, like, let's just try to be healthy. And it's so athlete dependent. Like, some people have the experience and the history and the ability to recover where that is not what it looks like. But for so many, like, unless you've been doing this stuff for like a decade, it's really, really hard to get to that place where you're running races of like 50 miles and more and have us have any approach other than let's survive. Let's, like, the priority is always, always, always recover from the event, because there is no training that you can do that will make up for being under recovered, because your body will not adapt to it. So the emphasis always, always, always has to be recovery. However, particularly novice athletes, as soon as they do the big thing, they're like, oh my God, I did the big thing. And then they get anxious for the next big thing and they stop prioritizing that recovery, and they want to start to jam in a bunch of training absent the recovery that is required.
Yeah. And I always, I think the thing to really remember here is you have more than one season
Yes.
to accomplish these goals.
Correct.
Even my athletes who are grand masters out there, they are, in their 60s or 70s, 50s, they feel like the time window for continuing to get better and to race is narrowing. Even you guys have plenty more time than you think. And so, like, let's not push up these timelines for the sake of, wanting to accomplish something right now. Do your due diligence. Get the work in, do the recovery, do it right. If you're going to do any of these things in a meaningful way, I think doing it right really matters. And that's what's hot.
Yeah. Love that.
All right. GPS watches.
Ooh.
I love this because it comes with a little qualifier here. So GPS watches, hot or not? If we mostly train by time and RPE, aren't Garmin and Coros watches just expensive timekeepers that provide vanity metrics and an opportunity to easily post on Strava and get some dopamine kicks from kudos?
Okay. I love that.
Yeah.
And I feel like this person is having like the galaxy brain moment where they're just like, whoa, like accidentally have an $800 stopwatch. I love this.
So it can tell me I'm under recovered.
Yeah. Because I need to be negged by a fancy bracelet.
I need 72 hours of recovery after a 60-minute recovery run.
This morning, what woke me up was my Garmin beeping and saying, nice job, you recovered really well yesterday. And that interrupted my sleep, and I was furious. That is so mean.
I was actually reading a study this morning. I subscribe to the HRV for Training newsletter, which always has new updates and information about how to best use HRV. And there was a study done on folks who use like Garmin Coros watches for HRV versus who use a morning reading. Mm-hmm. And lo and behold, the watches are very inaccurate.
Yes.
So again, how much time and energy and, how much of our emotional feeling selves are we putting into the information that our watches give us?
Yeah. So,
is that really hot or not?
Yes.
Well, know my answer.
Yeah.
Folks know my answer.
I love this question, and I think this person is spot on. GPS watches can become expensive dopamine dispensers if you let them. But if you use them well, I think they can be a tool with real training value. I think they're a nice to have, not a need to have. However, if you have one, as many people, like, I think it's very rare that I encounter an athlete that doesn't have a smartwatch. So I always view our role as like, you already have this tool. Let's make sure we're using it appropriately. So step one, I think, would be an objectivity check. Again, RPE, or relative perceived exertion. Rate of perceived exertion is the gold standard because your body is the lab. Perception can drift. Heat, altitude, fatigue, or stress can all skew how hard something feels. So a watch can sort of help provide the data counterpoint to that. Again, RPE is what is actually true. Data here is just the proxy, but we still want to accumulate some amount of this data. It can also provide long-term tracking. So like, we like to use training peaks for our training. I love being able to see how, like, for the past 8 years of my training history, how I've built over time, like the macro data. Adaptation happens really gradually, and watches let us look at months and years of data. Trends in resting heart rate variability, pace at given effort, or sleep can highlight progress or can help identify red flags that we might miss day to day. And again, this is the challenge there is always trying to find the signal in the noise. Like, if you have one day where your HRV is a little bit off, but you feel fine, that's totally like, ignore that, throw it out the window. We're looking for the big macro trends. Like, if an athlete has had like HRV that is trending far below their baseline, and that's accompanied by performance declines. I mean, my first thought would be this person either has COVID or is pregnant or drank a 6-pack last night. One of those three things. Maybe all three. Hopefully not all three. And being able to zoom out is really, really helpful. And that's something you can't do if you just have a paper log in quite the same way.
Yeah. I think also, the training stress scores, again, just one data point, one proxy for stress, one proxy for, load management, one proxy for fatigue. But tools like intensity, like your IF or intensity factor, your RTSS, they're not perfect, but without the GPS watch, that information, like really, it doesn't end up being very accurate. And so it is helpful to have as accurate of a perspective on those things as possible, which means you need to have a GPS watch. But tracking that cumulative training load and recovery is a helpful indicator and predictor of performance gains and like injury risk. Obviously like in conjunction with athlete feedback, but it's great to have both of those things. Navigation and safety also, big, like being able to put your GPX file in your watch can be really helpful when you're out on a new trail and you want to figure out where to go and you're not sure where you are. Fueling and pacing feedback, seeing, what your pace is out there can be helpful. Seeing how long you've been out there can be helpful. Having like the little thing that beeps at you every 30 minutes so you know to take in a gel.
I love
is
the snack alarm.
Very helpful.
Yep.
So, I guess, it's nice to have these things. They actually can perform a very important function in training. It's not just about like uploading to Strava as seamlessly as possible so you can get some likes.
Although it's a little bit about that.
Yeah, I know for you, it is a lot about that.
Not a lot, a little.
Little bit.
I think long and hard about my Strava titles, and I appreciate when people commend my efforts.
I'm just a morning run kind of guy.
I like deep cuts. I'm very thoughtful. I think of myself as a Strava auteur. This is my medium. I'm the Picasso of Strava titles, minus all the problematic stuff with underage women. So I'm not like Picasso at all.
Careful what you say on here. Zoe Picasso.
Anyway, moving right along.
We have one more deep cut. We have one more hot or not here.
Yep.
Loading electrolytes, hot or not?
I'm going to do the boring thing that I like to do, and I'm going to say it depends, and I'm going to cite a couple studies.
Do it. Let's get into it.
So what does preloading mean? Basically what that means is taking a bolus of sodium, so often in the form of maybe salt capsules or a concentrated drink, 60 to 90 minutes before exercise to expand plasma volume and improve fluid retention. You're preloading with sodium. In theory, the theory behind this is that because sodium helps the body hold on to fluid, which could mean more circulating blood volume, which would mean better cooling, improved cardiovascular stability, and lower perceived exertion and heat. And basically you're not playing catch up as much on your sodium. So there's really not a ton of really awesome science on this. There are some small studies that show that pre-exercise sodium loading can increase plasma volume and delay the rise in core temperature during exercise and heat. Some evidence suggests it can reduce perceived exertion and improve time to exhaustion. But again, these are small studies and the effects were really modest, and they were most pronounced in hot conditions or with athletes who are very salty sweaters. And I think that is the really big thing here is this works for the people it works for.
Yeah.
And this is not something that we should extrapolate at the population level. There was really not any high quality evidence that shows that it's helpful in cool conditions or for short duration exercise. And there are downsides and risks, right? High sodium doses can cause GI upset, bloating, or sloshy gut, especially if the drink is too concentrated. So if you're a salty sweater, maybe yes, depending on your goals on what your sodium intake rates are, but not everyone needs to chug a shit ton of sodium before they go out for a 30-minute jog. But for salty sweaters, this can be something that you trial before long runs, before workouts, and then depending on how that trialing goes, could implement into your hydration and fueling strategy for race day. But just chugging salt for the sake of it isn't going to be like a random performance boost for everyone.
I think that could be really risky, to be
I would
honest.
not recommend that.
I mean, my recommendation for athletes is to hydrate with electrolytes before your race, but I don't consider that like pre-loading. I don't consider that like carbo loading. You know what I mean? Like in the same way. It's just, drink some electrolytes before the race to ensure that you go out there and you're hydrated. And that's really important because a lot of times athletes are traveling before races. A lot of times they're going up to elevation before races. All of these factors, which, necessitate you being on top of your hydration in order to perform well. What I typically do is I use the same concentration as my sweat rate when I do that. So it's no like different going in, hopefully, as will be sweated out later on.
Yeah.
Again, no science to back that up. It just seems like a logical thing to do.
If you're it's just like if you're a saltier sweater or a heavier sweater, the less catch up you're playing. Like if you start a run already dehydrated and depleted, that's not helpful. So being like hydrating well in the course of daily life, and again, for really salty people, being very mindful of that as well is going to be helpful.
Yeah,
but
totally.
Again,
for
just
those
like
super salty sweaters.
Yeah, this is not something that just like randomly you'll get superpowers if you chug a bunch of Element.
I think you get swollen hands if you do that.
A lot of things could happen.
All right. Questions from Reddit. We have a question from Reddit. Love this segment before we get into the main themes for today. But there is a great question on there. I thought it'd be really fun to dig in because we've talked so much about periodized training on this podcast. So let's, kind of get into some of the broad strokes here. Is there any sort of even roughly mathematical relationship for interval design? It all seems so random, but part of me wants to believe that there's some regularity. Like for training in a gym where weight, number of reps, and number of sets can be adjusted to get the desired effect. I want to believe that there is some guideline to running intervals, likely around intensity, pace or heart rate, duration, distance or time, recovery, and number of intervals. But I can't really find anything. So, is there math? Is there not math? Are intervals random? Is interval design random, Zoe?
And I'm also really stressed about what this person is seeing that makes them think it's random, because there are, here's my take, there are patterns and they are obvious. So here they are.
No, let's get into it because I think people often gloss over this, and there is a lot of evidence behind why we have workout designs and and why we do what we do.
Yes, there is math. It's not like a 100% rigid. Again, we are squishy human bodies. We aren't like computers that operate off a binary. So I think that that's always like a little humility caveat to bring into these conversations. But we want to think in ratios when it comes to workout design. Do you want to explain VO2 max?
Well, sure. I think, we can run through this
top of the ladder
pretty quickly. We can go through VO2 max. We can go through threshold really quickly, but let's just start at the top. So VO2 max intervals, that's a very broad way of describing like training intensities that are 10 out of 10 RPE. Very, very intense work. This is the most intense work that you can do. So it is the shortest time course for adaptations, and you generally need less of this work to provoke adaptations. So the minimum dose via the research is 12 minutes of accumulated time at intensity. And you can go up to 24, 25 minutes.
And it is going to vary a lot with experience level.
So much so.
Beginners are going to be able to have a much smaller dose effect.
I think for most athletes, interval length would be between 1 and 3 minutes. But for elite athletes, you're going to be doing like 3 to 5 minute intervals at this intensity.
I have feelings when I see 5-minute intervals on my schedule.
And the key to like note here is the 1-to-1 work to rest ratio.
Yeah.
So 2 minutes of work, 2 minutes of rest. And when we talk about like threshold work, okay, next zone down, 8 to 9 out of 10 RPE. We're essentially looking at intervals where we need about 30 to 60 minutes of accumulated work via the research. I think
again, the research often doesn't look at amateur athletes, so especially not beginners. So again, take the numbers
in practice.
Yes, but take a bit of that with a grain of salt. I'm not prescribing 60-minute threshold workouts to absolute beginners. Your dose response is going to be you don't need as large a dose of threshold. So
totally,
that's the caveat there.
Yes, and I think you said that correctly. Like if you're a newer athlete, you're going to need less time at intensity to provoke adaptation. Interval length here, honestly, probably anywhere from 3 to 20 or 30-minute long intervals. Huge variation in interval length here, depending on what your goal is. Do you want to be on the higher side? Do you want to be on that 9 out of 10 RPE range? So in essence, maybe we're going a little faster than threshold pace. We're pulling up our lactate threshold. Interval is going to be shorter if you want to go faster. If you want to go a bit slower, the interval is going to be longer. So are we going to push up threshold or are we going to pull up threshold? It really depends on who you are, your experience level, and what your goals are for doing this threshold work.
Yeah.
But the key thing to note here is a 2-to-1 work to rest ratio. So if your interval is 8 minutes long, your rest period is going to be 4 minutes long.
Yeah.
And maintaining that ratio is pretty key for thresholds workouts.
What about steady state? What do you do for steady state?
I think steady state is a little bit more of a mixed bag here.
Because it's sub-threshold, so theoretically you can play a little bit faster and looser with the recovery.
Yeah. It's
like you could do 30-minute intervals with 5 minutes of recovery, and you should be able to
what is that,
recover
3
fully.
to 1? Yeah, I've got great mathematical abilities off the top of my head.
1,
close, same ratios, more or less. But the interval length here matters a lot. So we're looking at longer intervals, usually 15 minutes to up to 60 minutes. And total duration of a session is usually going to be somewhere between 20 minutes and 120 minutes.
Yeah.
It could be as little as 15 minutes. Maybe you're more of a beginner athlete doing some marathon training. But typically, you're going to want to get up into that 30+ minute range for these.
Mm-hmm.
So an example workout might be 30 minutes at 7 out of 10 RPE, or 2 by 30 minutes at 7 out of 10 RPE with 5 minutes of rest in between. Those workouts are, obviously they're kind of in between the thresholds. They're above your aerobic threshold and they are below your lactate threshold. It's really race specific work there that we're looking at, but there's specifics. And I guess maybe the last thing to touch on is workouts that have a neuromuscular influence.
Yeah.
So those would be our strides that we talked about on one of our more recent podcasts, where we mentioned the 5 things every runner should be doing to get faster.
Yep. Now our most downloaded podcast.
Oh no way!
Shout out to the number 5.
Let's go 5s. This is the 5.
It's like Sesame Street for runners. Today's show is once again brought to you by the number 5.
The 5 science-backed pacing strategies for ultras. That's what I'm calling this podcast. Hopefully we can pull 5 things out.
Oh, your girl did.
Smart. Okay, so strides, neuromuscular work, typically very short interval lengths, not a lot of time at intensity. We're talking minutes of total time. So 4 to 8 by 20 seconds. It's just a couple minutes of work there. And we're looking for more recovery time. So anywhere from 1 minute to essentially 2 minutes of recovery time on those in order to maximize output levels.
Right. And you want to be fully recovered so that way you're actually refining the correct neuromuscular pathways. You don't want to be practicing having sloppy, crappy form from fatigue. So
and it's not dissimilar to the RPE you're using when you're doing VO2 max intervals. It's probably a little harder if you're a more advanced athlete, there's subtleties there. But that real key difference with the neuromuscular work is good form.
Mm-hmm. Love it.
So yes, there is rhyme and reason with regard to design of intervals. And if you, sir, lady, whomever you are being coached and you don't understand your interval design, give us a call. We'd love to work with you.
That makes me anxious. But, again, I want people to understand that the math is scaffolding and to always remember the body doesn't operate in neat, finite chunks of 1 minute or 10 minutes. It responds to overall stress and adaptation, not the stopwatch. So again, that's why I'm a little reluctant to be like, you need exactly 12 minutes because it's like, well,
right.
That is going to be extremely individually variable. And again, your body doesn't know what 12 minutes is.
I've seen 10 minutes of VO2 max work, hurt grown men.
Exactly. And if you fade 3 seconds before your 3-minute interval is up, your body's not going to be like, oh, well, didn't get the 3 minutes. Guess I won't adapt to that provocation.
That wasn't total 12 minutes. You really messed that up.
Out the window, all of these things are nuanced and there are gradations. And I just always want to impress upon people that, again, your body is a squishy, lovely organism, not a stopwatch.
They know. We keep telling them. Every week we tell them. All right, let's get into the 5 science-backed pacing strategies. I don't know if there's 5, but there's a few things
there are.
Here.
There's exactly 5.
I really enjoy this because I'm actually in a period where I have a lot of athletes with upcoming 100-milers. And so we're talking a lot about pacing strategy and race strategy. So the timeliness of this podcast feels great to me, and I'm excited to get into it. So let's break it down. The 5 science-backed pacing strategies that top finishers have in common. What can we learn from this? So what does the science say about pacing?
So I'm going to cite a few studies here, and I wanted to sort of just briefly name check the studies and sort of walk through the methodology so that people can understand how I'm applying the information, because that is important to understand.
Yes, it is.
So there was a study from Ultra Trail Cape Town where researchers looked at performance data from one of the most competitive mountain ultras, and they found that uphill pace was the single strongest predictor of finish time. So that's one of the studies. We were also looking at a study from Ultra Trail Mont Blanc. We're looking at a similar study from the Western States Endurance Run. We're looking at a study from the Spartathlon, which is a 246-kilometer road ultra, because I think that adds a little bit of context, even though it's not trail ultra. I think the study was still interesting and high quality enough to have some takeaways from. But yeah, so I think a question that comes to a lot of people's minds right off the bat is well, why should a lot of these studies look at elite pace, how elites pace their races, and how applicable is that to mid and back of packers? And I think that's a really good question. And what I would say to that is that the point here of looking at these elite strategies isn't to say you should run like Killian, just copy Killian's race plan, right? Duh. If I could, I absolutely would. It's the patterns that help elite athletes succeed are the same principles that keep mid-packers and back-of-packers moving forward, finishing strong, and avoiding blow-ups.
No, and I think that's important to note. Although our training might not look the same as Killian's, in a lot of the principles should be the same. A lot of the theory behind it should be the same. If it's not, that to me, that raises questions about, what are we doing and what is Killian doing? Why aren't they the same? Because honestly, when it comes down to it, a lot of this stuff isn't really rocket science. It's not what's the secret to success? The big percentages are the things that matter. And I think when we go through this and we talk about what these pacing strategies are, folks will recognize that it's really simple strategy.
Yes. And even though Killian, Jordan, and I might have slightly different physiologies, we're also not a totally different species, right? So whether you're running a 15-hour 100-miler or a 36-hour 100-miler, your muscles fatigue in the same way. You're still a human. Or glycogen runs low in the same way, and your quads get shredded the same way. Gravity happens to both Killian and I similarly. So the principles that keep elites durable apply to everyone.
Yeah. 100%. I want to impress upon people that, the number one thing that we're focusing on is minimizing slowdown. Even elites fade in ultras. How much they fade is going to differ from how much mid and backpackers fade. But that difference in how much really matters. How much you're fading in these races is going to determine a lot about how well you're able to finish in the time that you get to finish in. So for mid and backpackers, learning to fade 20% instead of 40%, which is what these studies show happens at the high end, is really the difference between like fighting cutoffs all day and like finishing feeling good with a smile on your face.
Yeah. And energy conservation just matters when you're out there for longer. So if you're out on the course for 30 plus hours, pacing and fueling are more important, not less. Small mistakes will really start to compound over that time scale of these like 30 plus hour races.
Well, data from Spartathlon and Western States. Wow, that's a fun one. The Spartathlon and Western States. I think that really backs us up. So athletes who controlled their pacing better, regardless of finish time, finished higher within their age groups. And that means even among mid packers, like there was steadier pacing predicts stronger outcomes.
Yeah, so you don't need elite genetics to use elite pacing strategies. The stuff works no matter your pace. Holding back on the first climbs, keeping your effort even, and fueling consistently are tools that anyone can apply. So let us approach our first tool / rule.
Let me get into this one because, I'm thinking about this right now with that climb up Mount Warner at Run Rabbit, that opening climb that we've got coming up.
Largest climb of the entire
coming
race
up in a couple
the first
races.
Mile.
Yeah.
Kind of like the escarpment at Western States.
Exactly. Like, oh my God. Okay. So here's the deal. Start the climbs stupid easy.
Yep.
At UTCT, uphill pace was the single strongest predictor of finishing position.
Yep.
So starting easy is probably going to net you a reduced degradation of pace overall.
Similarly at UTMB, an analysis of the top 10 finishers showed that they slowed far less later on climbs compared to the rest of the field, meaning they didn't burn themselves early. Looking at Western States, again, the whole field does slow down to an extent. Elites still did slow later on in climbs, but they started more conservatively and maintained a smaller drop-off. Fun gender split here. Men were more likely to attack early on climbs and fade, whereas women in the data held back more on those early climbs and slowed less compared to men.
That ego.
Yeah. So what's important to acknowledge here is that climbs are the biggest energy cost during your race. And that uphill pace is the single strongest predictor of finish time. And that's because climbing is where you are asking the most of your cardiovascular and muscular systems at the same time. Every minute uphill costs more glycogen, more oxygen, and more strength in the same minute than on flat ground.
So I just want people to pause that, rewind that, and listen again. There's a lot of folks, they feel like the greatest cost is the downhill running because it beats the quads up more.
It's overall, the most mechanical damage.
Yeah, and that's tough. But when we're talking about really, really long races, how much glycogen you're able to maintain, how much oxygen you're consuming, that aerobic, it's not damage, but fatigue, really. Yeah. The aerobic fatigue that happens
from
cost that happens from climbing too fast, that is really going to slow you down much later. It's going to probably make your quads hurt more on downhills because you're going to brake more. And I think there's a lot of potential for upending what is possibly a strong race when you go out too early. So uphills really decide how much you have left early on.
Yeah.
And it's really important if you redline early climbs to recognize you're accumulating lactate, you're burning through glycogen, you're digging a hole for your quads and your calves that it's going to be hard to climb out of. And also, runners who hold back on the uphill tend to fade less. And we have the data to back that up, meaning they can run later where others are hiking and walking. And that matters when you're chasing cutoffs. That matters if you're a mid-pack runner looking for an age group podium, or, you're
just trying to do this stuff well.
Yeah, you're looking to improve on a time from, previous year. You're trying to finish before that second night sets in or something like that.
Yeah. And a really fascinating trend that came out in the data was how much pacing those uphills sets the tone for the whole race. For instance, looking specifically at the UTMB study, the research showed that the top finishers at UTMB slowed far less on late climbs compared to mid-packers. They weren't necessarily significantly faster on flats and downhills, but they certainly didn't hemorrhage time quite as much when the terrain got extremely steep. So that really suggests that climbs are a super key leverage point. Get them right, and the rest of the race will stay steadier. And then, I think that like the big question we get a lot is like, where can I push in races? Because like I remember seeing a video with Courtney's husband, Kevin.
Yeah.
Someone was like, what's your strategy for 100-mile races? And he was like, I start slow and fade. Which
classic.
It's hilarious, Kevin, and that's what we want to not do here. So where do we think about where we want to push in races? And sometimes athletes will be like, well, climbs are really hard. I'll push on the downhills. And we don't want to do that because downhills are sneaky expensive. It's tempting to think you can make up time on the downhill, but eccentric muscle damage to the quads really adds up fast. And that damage doesn't show up in the moment, but like hours later, it can really, really wreck your stride. So that's why elites aren't going to be bombing relative to them those descents early on. They're going to float them with light, quick steps to save their legs for later climbs when the power really matters. So when you think about where it's appropriate to push in a race, it's the costs for going uphill are primarily metabolic and energetic, whereas on the downhills, they're going to be potentially both of those things and mechanical.
All of it.
Yeah.
So, I mean, really, you're looking like, where can you push? Well, I think we're thinking actually about trying to, instead of push, we're thinking about trying to set a sustainable uphill pace and a pace that you believe you can hold for long periods of time. And again, the downhill is not where we make up time. A downhill is where we emphasize being smooth and smart.
Being smart. Yep. Yes. Downhill should feel smooth and easy. You'll make up more ground later on in the race when you're still able to rock the climbs.
Maybe a couple practical training takeaways here. What do we think about in practice to help us get used to doing this on race day? RPE 4 to 5 on like the first third of climbs in your long run. Train at a race similar intensity. You could also think about including like delayed pushes to your workouts, maybe adding like a tempo, a steady state tempo, a moderate tempo towards the end of one of your long runs to help, you understand what it feels like to push when you're fatigued, to build some of that durability.
Yep. All right. Tool number 2, keep pace variation small. So looking at the study from Ultra Trail Cape Town, top 10 finishers had a pace variation of about 32%, while others averaged about 35%, which seems small on paper, but that's a big difference when you extrapolate it out to 10 hours. Looking at the study from UTMB across both men and women, the smallest pace variability correlated with higher placement, especially particularly in those mountains. And fascinatingly, looking at the Western States study, fastest and slowest runners had less variability than mid-packers. The middle performers had more surging and fading. I think that this is interesting because, and my hypothesis here is because you have to qualify for Western States, that there's plenty of folks who like maybe it took them like 10 years to get in. So they're experienced ultra runners. They may not be the fastest, but they know how to execute at their effort level. And even if they're at the back of the pack, they're still obviously outstanding and really experienced runners executing on their race, not having as much like surge and then fade and then surge and then fade.
UTMB, it's 100 miles in the mountains. For our elites, our top 10 finishers, they're only slowing by 10 or 15% in the back half, especially on climbs. But the mid-packers are often slowing 25 to 30%, and the packers up to 40% or more. I think for, a relatable example of this is if you're running a 15-minute mile early, an elite-style fade has you at a 17-minute mile later in the race.
Yeah.
But a mid-pack fade means 19 to 20-minute miles, and a back-of-the-pack fade means 22 to 24 minute miles. And that's a serious difference. That's like jogging into Chamonix and hiking hard trying to beat cutoffs. At Western States, which is a net downhill race with hot conditions, elites were only fading by 12 to 18%, and mid-packers, again, 25 to 30%. Especially late in the canyons and on Cal Street, there was more fade, and back of the packers were slowing 35+%. Sometimes they were even like at night, they were even going 50% slower. That's really, really considerable. So, again, in general mountain hundreds, we've got great examples of this. Elites, 10 to 20% at races like Hard Rock, Leadville, Run Rabbit. Mid-packers, 25 to 35%. Back of the packers, 40+%. What can we extrapolate from this? Don't go out too fast.
Don't go out too fast. That's a race day strategy thing. I also think train durability. Simply this is like the lamest advice, but just more training.
More training, back-to-back long runs.
Even when I've had really great builds for previous 100-mile races, the way I feel now approaching the end of ultras, 6 years into this thing, is just a world of difference. And all it is experience and year after year logging thousands and thousands of miles. And I know that's not sexy advice of one hack to make sure you fade less.
Right.
I know that training consistently for 8 years isn't exactly a hack, but that's just the truth is that's what you can do to get from a 30% fade to, I was so excited when my coach and I made my plan for Never Summer. He predicted me to have a 13% fade and I had a 12% fade.
That's strong.
And I felt like that was a savage flex to beat the fade predictions.
I love that.
It's an elite fade.
All right. Pacing strategy number 3, use terrain to manage effort. So Western States, terrain changes cause big swings for most runners, but top finishers flatten these swings by adjusting effort, not forcing pace. At UTMB, runners who adapted effort on climbs and descents instead of trying to hold the same pace preserve speed later in the race. And at UTCT, even with large elevation gain, the most successful runners manage climbs at a lower intensity than flats or descents early on. So, what can we take from this?
So simulate race terrain and key workouts, right? If you've never pushed on a long uphill or you've never pushed on a longer downhill, it's going to be really hard for your body to do that under racing conditions. Also really important to practice fueling both on the uphills and the downhills. They can be challenging in their own ways. Fueling with poles can be pretty difficult. Hydrating with poles can be difficult. So making sure you've practiced that if you plan on doing that in your race. The jostling associated with running on sustained downhills can make it mechanically harder to intake fuel and digest it. So practice that as well. And yeah, just making sure that that being able to fuel consistently is really key to being able to manage your effort consistently.
The other thing that I like to have athletes focus on is learning how they respond to certain kinds of terrain.
Mm-hmm.
How quickly does your RPE shoot up when you're on a steep climb? How quickly does it go down when you're on a descent? Is your descending RPE the same when it's technical or versus when it's smooth and easy and non-technical? Learn how you respond to the terrain. Because during a race, if you know how you're going to respond to the terrain, you can be well ahead of the game. I think steeper climbs go easier. They have a larger demand. Technical downhills, they have a much more a higher degree of muscular demand and muscular breakdown. Learn how to run those sections smooth and to regulate your effort. If you feel there are moments where you could push a little bit, is the terrain appropriate for that?
Yeah.
So you're not getting outside yourself. I like to tell athletes a lot, the terrain dictates how fast you can go in an ultra.
Yeah.
And if you try to work against what the terrain is telling you can do, you're wasting energy out there.
Yeah, I went out and I was just previewing part of the Run Rabbit course, and there's an uphill section that is stupid technical. There's just a ton of rocks, huge boulders, you're going over boulders with paint on the boulders that you're supposed to follow, the dashed line.
Oh, Adirondack style.
Yes, and I was well, I will unlikely be laying down extremely fast splits here, but that's a great but it comes in the middle of a more sustained climb. And the bottom part of it is pretty gradual and not technical. And above it is pretty gradual and not technical. So that for me means that there's maybe a little bit of room to get feisty either above or below that section, knowing that I will definitely be taking some walking steps in the rocky section. But again, not getting outside of myself, not laying down a threshold workout. And again, remaining intentional with fueling throughout.
All right. Number 4, don't bank time, build it.
Yeah, so looking at that study from UTMB, the data shows athletes who went out hard in the first 50K often slowed by 30 to 40% in the back half, which is like hours on the final climbs. So to put like concrete numbers to this, a runner averaging 12-minute miles for the first 50K may fade to 20 or 22-minute miles in the last 50K, finishing behind someone who started at a 14-minute mile, but then was able to hold on closer to a 16-minute mile later. So really thinking about getting that effort even. Like I had one athlete that was like, she was doing like her first ever race and she was like, I'm going to do a run walk. And I was like, please do not do that. And she was like, it works for me. And I was like, that defies physiology. And you would literally be the first person on earth for whom this is true. You really want your pacing and effort to be as consistent as possible. The most consistent finishes actually increased relative effort later on, which looks like holding steady paces while others cratered. So knowing that you're going to have to turn up that RPE volume later in the race and not wanting to turn that up too early on.
No, I think that's really the key, right?
Yeah.
Like if you go easy early, you have the ability then to kind of be maxing out later. And that's kind of what it feels like to do a 17-minute mile and a 100-miler later on in the race. It feels like, the hardest you can go at that time. But if you didn't train for that, if you didn't practice that in your training, and if you didn't pace well early in the day, that is going to feel impossible.
Not going to feel good.
Couple things here from Western states. Positive splits, so slower second halves dominate across the field, but the degree of slowdown, again, it really predicts performance. That elite slowdown, 10 to 15% in the back half. Mid-pack slowdown, 25 to 30 or up to 35, and back of the pack, 40%. So, you've got to practice this in training. First timers, you guys often get pulled by adrenaline, like the crowds, the heat of the moment.
Like UTMB races.
Yeah, everyone goes way too fast. Just settle in and wave to those people goodbye, because you'll see them later if you're going the proper
Last year
pace.
when I got second at Leadville, I was the 28th woman at the first aid station.
I mean,
so that is 27 people whom I passed.
Case in point, I have a really ridiculous race result like that too. When I won the Telluride Mountain Run in 2021 or 22, whenever the heck that was, years ago now, I started in 40th.
Yeah.
And I won the race by a large margin, over 20 minutes.
Yeah.
So it's okay to start slow, my friends.
If you're Katie Scheid and you can bang out a bunch of 6-minute miles, girl, get it.
She's starting slow for her.
That's starting slow for her. For many of us mere mortals who aren't Katie Scheid, we should adjust our pacing accordingly.
Yeah, because literally the veterans are learning to leave gas in the tank.
Yeah.
That's just the most simple way of thinking about it. How can we train this?
Yeah, so I think a really great way of doing this is those back-to-back long runs to help simulate racing on tired legs, to learn what it feels like to run tired. Will help you develop an appreciation and a respect for what that feels like.
A deep respect for those tired legs. It's so necessary.
Again, the thing in order to keep that pacing even and consistent, that relative effort at the end is going to go up.
Okay. So I also think it's super important to consider durability workouts here.
Yes, durability is huge. Again, just train for 8 years and you'll get better. It's so easy.
You don't even need to do steady state tempos in the middle of your long runs or at the end to do that.
Steady state tempos are a great idea.
If you aren't doing those, I definitely recommend adding those into your long runs. Okay. Number 5, last but not least, train for uphill efficiency.
In case you guys haven't noticed, uphills are extremely important to your ultra running success.
Oh my God. Revelations.
Yep. Across UTMB, Western States, Ultra Trail Cape Town, late race climbs separated the strongest runners from the rest. So even if you pace wisely early on, you still need muscular endurance to keep climbing after 15 to 25 hours on feet.
Whew.
Efficiency here isn't just about speed, it's about that fatigue resistance.
So, the science and the data show us, looking at UTMB in Western States, uphill pace is the single best predictor of final placement or how well you do in these races, what your finishing time is. Faster.
This is great news for me because I don't feel like my strengths are downhills.
Yeah, I mean, it's bad news for me because I tend to go way hard on the downhills because that's my strength. And I tend to lay. I mean, maybe it's good news for me if I just control my downhill.
Because also,
I lay back a lot on the
uphill performance. Again, the best way to get better at climbing uphill is to get fitter. You don't need super fancy leg work. Like, yes, having strong legs is important. And if you can't have a crappy chassis and a strong engine, but you have to have, like, it will not matter how strong your legs are if your engine is not ready to freaking go on the hills. And I think so often, because strength training feels like a really easy thing to latch onto, people are like, oh, well, I'll just do weighted step ups. And it's like, sure, but we also have to really, really focus on getting fitter. The reason you are slow uphill is because you need to be fitter.
Right.
That
totally.
is what it is. It is fitness.
Well, and I think also when we look at runners who have the least amount of fade in races, it's because they're losing less time on those late climbs.
Yes.
And so that's suggesting that they weren't like maybe necessarily overall fitter, but they were better prepared for those uphills. They practiced them more. They were more durable. Obviously fitness is very important, like you said.
Like, it's not what we're saying is, like, it's not just fitness in terms of like VO2 max.
Yeah.
It's like, well, sure, but
overall capacity.
What is your overall capacity? Because being able to rev your engine once, that doesn't matter if there's 30 hours of hills that you need to run through.
Which is why I will be huffing and puffing at Run Rabbit. Uphill specific training builds, guys. Oh my gosh. These have been a total game changer for me in the last year of my training. I've done every single workout except for one workout in the last almost maybe year to date. I think I started with my new coach last August.
Yeah.
I've done all but one workout when I was in Denver uphill. And I have seen an incredible difference in not only my easy running pace uphill, but my race performance uphill. I have not gotten faster on the downhills, but my race performances have gotten faster, and I'm able to run a larger percentage of uphills in races, which to me is like, at this point, man, I couldn't ask for anything more. And it's just a simple difference in training.
Yep.
Instead of running on the flat, do your workouts uphill.
If you can do workouts uphill, do that. Treadmills help that happen.
You sure?
Basically, you can do VO2 max workouts. You can and should do VO2 max workouts uphill. You can and should do threshold workouts uphill. All of that, like
you can do your steady state.
You can do steady state uphill. You can do all the things. Also, practice your power hiking. Remember, that's not a fallback. It is a skill. We want to do it powerfully. It's not a mall walk. You want it to be powerful. So practice hiking with and without poles at different grades so that you can really start to understand your gears. And in training, work on delaying that transition to hiking. Like, work on just not like, oh, I see a hill, I'm just going to, take a back seat and let the hike happen. Think about pushing a little bit, right? Like, think about getting a little flirty, and discovering where your limits are in training so that you don't blow through them on race day too. Strength training also has its place here. Target your posterior chain, so glutes, hamstrings, calves, with movements like single leg movements, particularly split squats, step ups, Romanian deadlifts. Strong uphill movers equal less late race breakdown. Mm-hmm. But again, just hitting the gym will not compensate for not building fitness.
No, I agree. And also just practicing those long climbs in training, practicing race similar terrain is going to help you if you're not able to get on race similar terrain, approximating it as much as you can. I think the biggest takeaways here are, you can if you pace climbs perfectly early, you're going to have a real big benefit later in the race.
But if your legs aren't efficient in that circumstance, you're still going to fall apart.
Yeah.
So efficiency is built before race day. Every uphill session in training is a deposit that you'll cash in when the race hits its steepest climb. So it's a part to, like, there's the, like, you need to have that smart strategy so that you can actually follow through on the promise of your consistent training.
So, little summary, that was kind of a lot of information, but I think the main points, the 5 points really hit home for folks. Start climbs easy, uphill pace, it explains finishing time better than any other metric. And how you govern yourself on like the first third of climbs in your race is a really important tool.
Yeah.
Go easier than you think you should.
Keep that pace variation low. Again, across UTMB, Western States, Partathlon, the smallest pace swings, even just a few percentage points separated top finishers from mid-packers. So smooth efforts are always going to be yo-yo pacing. If it feels surgy, it's probably too hard for you.
A lot to learn from that one. It's good.
Are you a yo-yo pacer?
I feel like I'm a yo-yo pacer. I do.
I mean, you usually are quite close to your splits in races. And you had when you did Silver Rush recently, you had a really strong back half relative to the other parts of the men's field. You went from being in 14th place to like 7th. You passed like 7 people in the last 14 miles. So that to me would indicate...
There was some yo-yo. I really felt crappy before mile 25 and after mile 25. Sure. I was a yo-yo out there. I mean, I don't know how much percentage of actual like slowdown there is versus like what it actually felt like.
Yeah.
That yo-yo could be more of a feeling. But in general,
like,
I've good.
I'm not like, it's not intelligent to just yell at people. Don't have challenges during your ultra. Yeah, if I could do this shit, don't throw up. Like all you have to do is not run slower. Duh. Like, yes, of course, like that is the most obvious thing ever. But like, how do we actually like systematize those takeaways?
Well, one takeaway from my race that is, corroborated by what we see in data from Western States and UTMB is adjust effort to terrain.
Yep.
So like I purposefully slowed down and regulated my effort much more over the high points in the course where we were at higher elevation.
Yep.
So it's kind of that takeaway of like, stop fighting the course. Your output needs to change based on what kind of terrain you have in front of you. The more you force the pace, the less efficient you are, the more energy you use.
Yep.
So don't fight it.
Yep.
Be one with it.
Be one with it. And resist the urge to bank time. I remember once I was running the Collegiate Peaks 50, which I won outright. And there was a gentleman running with me in the first 7 miles.
Somebody mansplained something to you. I already know where this is going.
He did. He was like, have you run ultras before? And I was like, yes. And he was like, this is my first. And I was like, that is great. And he was like, I'm going to bank time now so that when I slow down because it gets hot, it doesn't matter. And I was like, that's a strategy. And I didn't Zoe-splain to him because that shit is not free, guys. I get paid to do this. I get a 1099. I'm an employee.
You're
professionally. I found a way to monetize Zoe-splaining, which is really wonderful.
And the people love it. They email us.
Needless to say,
once a month to tell us.
This gentleman's pacing strategy did not pay off. Banking time before it gets hot is not a thing. Your glycogen stores, they're not loving that. Your muscles, they're not loving that.
No, these takeaways I feel like are great, and they go against what the ego wants. The ego wants to bank that time. The ego wants to go fast through tough terrain.
Yep.
The ego wants to take that first climb out hard and, show everyone, that you can be a great performer. But like the smart runner, the pragmatic runner is going to just like let those guys go.
The way
I'll see you later.
I used to be on my college climbing team, despite not actually being that good at rock climbing. We used to have a saying that was skip the clip, take the whip, and charge it to the game, which is how I think of really dumb ultra pacing, where you go right past the clip, you take the whip because you're just charging so hard.
You will be taking a whip at
You charge
it
to the game, and you get to experience the distinct pleasure of a big old whip.
Right, and I think we know like people who bank time have a bigger slowdown. Yeah. Unfortunately,
it's not how that works.
So minimize your slowdown by going very easy in the beginning, so you're still going very easy towards the end when a 16-minute mile feels like 10 out of 10 RPE.
Yeah.
And train those uphills. Like we were mentioning before, more uphill work is going to allow for better uphill performance in races. It's going to build fatigue resistance. It's going to allow you to have more uphill specific like neural pathways developed. It's going to elicit more confidence on race day.
And it's actually very simple. Don't be a moron on race day, and don't be a moron in the 8 years leading up to your race, and train consistently.
It's impossible to avoid being a moron for 8 years.
Well, okay, you can dabble in idiocy.
You have to learn.
We're all dabbling in idiocy.
You have to learn.
Yes, you don't have to be perfect, but you can't be a sustained idiot.
If you've never gone out too hard in a race or a long run, you won't really know what is actually easy.
I did this in exactly one race, and I learned the lesson so hard that I think it's going to be a long time before I make that mistake again.
Yeah, your nervous system remembers. You are physically incapable of going too hard in the beginning of a race now. I
could still be dumb. I can still be real dumb.
I'd like to see that.
Yeah, challenge accepted.
You should be faster than me on the Mount Warner climb.
Well, because you get there's in Run Rabbit, the first man and woman to get to the top of the mountain get $1,000
each.
Yes, but you have to finish the race. So it's that like cat and mouse of like, you got to go balls to the wall, but then you got to hang on.
You give up the possibility of like many thousands of dollars.
That, spoiler alert to my competition who is undoubtedly listening
they're listening. They want to know your secrets.
Hour-plus secrets to my success as the woman who got 13th at UTMB Chianti.
It was a good performance.
I will not be doing that.
You will not be?
I will not try to win that.
Did you get the coin at Silver Rush at the top of the hill? Did
Absolutely
you sprint
not.
everybody
Never.
out?
I walked the fuck out of that hill, and I'm going to walk the fuck out of Mount Warner. So stay tuned to the live stream where you can watch me absolutely stroll.
Backwards. I'll be going backwards to save the
going
claws.
Backwards.
All right, guys. Thanks for tuning in. I think, barring any noroviruses this week, we should be back with you in just a week's time. So hang in there.
That public toilet seat.
The things you do in public bathrooms.
Me? Critiquing my public bathroom strategy?
Oh, all right. I digress. It's been a long day. Reach out. We love to hear from you guys. Questions, things you want us to cover. If you're interested in coaching, microcosmcoaching@gmail.com. Don't be shy. Book a consultation call. It never hurts to just talk to somebody about your training and see what coaching can do for you. Microcosm-coaching.com. And we'll be back with some form of 5 something for your running next week. See ya.